So this guide is going to be a basic introduction to how paragon boards work. Now, the reason I'm explaining this at this particular time is going into Season 3, a lot of players that played Seasonal are going to have access to a specific paragon board. This is what your paragon board looks like if you didn't know. That's going to have a specific glyph that they unlocked going over. And those, if it goes over to the Eternal Realm. Now, I'm already in the Eternal Realm, and a lot of players may not know how to build their paragon boards a certain way. So this is not going to be a build guide video for the Tears of Blood for when you come over to Eternal Realm. That's fairly easy. If you're playing Paragon and you're doing Abattoir of Deer, you know how Paragon works and you know the optimum way to build it. So this is for players that don't necessarily know what the ideal Paragon board is going to look like. So let's start. What is Paragon? If you notice how my level is level 74, that's that little blue bar that is right above my skill bar. That has those 3 little nodes on it. So what happens is when you hit level 50, you stop earning skill points for your skill tree. And you start earning Paragon points. Now there's a total of 225 Paragon points that you can earn. So there's 200 Paragon points that you can earn from just leveling your character. In addition to that, for Renown, you can get another 20 Paragon for Renown. So each of the regions that you max out their Renown for, you will get 4 Paragon points for. And then from the Altars of Lilith, each region has 1 Altar of Lilith that will give you 1 Paragon point. So you can get 20 from the Renown system and 5 from the Altars of Lilith. So 225. Now, you do not need to plan out in great detail every single Paragon node early on. You don't need to do that. However, when you're just starting to learn what the game is, you do need to know a few things. So this build guide is going to help you with that. Now, I am currently playing the Lightning Druid. This character's Paragon that I'm going to be explaining is not completely set up, by the way, because I will be adding a couple of glyphs to this once I have it. Now, if you see right here, I like how it says locked. Huh, that's interesting. If you see right here, I'm assuming that means we might get it for everybody then. What happens is, that's actually good, this helps explain something. When you first hit Paragon, you're only going to have the magic glyphs available to you. These magic glyphs suck, by the way. You're only going to have these in your tree at this first glyph socket, if you do unlock it, for the sole purpose of just having something in there or having something to level, so you're not wasting Paragon. However, you see all the yellow ones are all pretty good, and these are based around the type of build you're running. If you notice how Tears of Blood is kind of grayed out, and it says locked, that means I don't have it on this character. So how do you go about getting glyphs? The first thing you do is you turn in Tree of Whispers content over at the big tree. You open the cache, you run around, you collect your shit. It usually will drop glyphs. The other way you can earn it, and as well how you can level your glyphs, is by completing Nightmare Dungeons. You'll get glyphs that drop randomly in Nightmare Dungeons. It's going to be random, and it's unique to every character. So, what that means is, I can't just, if Bane, for example, drops on one druid, it doesn't drop for all the druids. Now, some of these will have shared names and will have shared aspects. What do I mean by that? So this is exploit for a druid. Now, this is very good for the druid that I'm playing, hence why it's socketed. The additional bonus on it is that when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is because not all druid builds have a way of applying that effect. Storm Druid does, but Earth Druid, Werewolf Druid, and Werebear Druid do not. They don't have any skills that automatically apply vulnerable. Because of that, the exploit glyph is actually slightly different. Now, if you want to compare this to, say, Necromancer, Necromancer has a different version of that exploit bonus. That version of the exploit bonus is not going to auto vulnerable enemies for you, because Necromancer has much more ways to make enemies vulnerable. So you do need to be careful about looking at some things. Another great example of this is Spirit, right? Wait, is it Spirit or Wrath? Spirit is the Druid's version of bonus critical strike damage. Okay, that's kind of what this does. Its additional bonus is that if critical strikes increase the damage, the enemy takes from you up to a certain amount. Now, barbarians have something similar to that. That's called Wrath. That increases critical strike damage. However, the additional bonus that they have is that critical strikes instead regen primary resource. So, don't look at an individual board, don't look at an individual glyph and go, wow, these are great, I can run this all across everybody. Every board's going to have their own unique pieces that are going to do different things. Now, this leads me to my first tip. When you're first starting the game, before you even start leveling and figuring out how you're going to play Connect 4 or Snake or whatever you want to call it, what you want to do, get a pen and paper, okay? And write down the 6 glyphs you want the most. Now, some classes will want more glyphs, okay? Some classes, like some of the sorceresses, some of the necromancers, they're going to want to run everything. If you're a summon mancer, you're going to be going, I want this, 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 this. Because not only do you need your summons, but you need your summon glyphs, but you need other glyphs. So, realistically speaking, you can get 6 glyphs. 6 is all you can get. It's going to be less if you run Tears of Blood, and it's going to be less if you need to get legendary nodes, which I'll explain that in a sec. So a good example of this, using this character, I need Earth. This is a Lightning Druid. So once again, this is playing a key part. This is a Lightning Druid. I need Earth and Sky because I need the Nature Magic skills deal X damage. I need Exploit. Excuse me, because I apply a lot of exploit, I apply a lot of vulnerability, and that extra damage to vulnerable targets is very good. I need Fulminate to increase my lightning damage, and it also, the bonus is very good. I need Spirit. I critically strike a lot. I want the bonus critical strike damage. And the 5th one that I'm working my way towards currently is Electrocution, which gives bonus damage to lightning bolts and dancing bolts, and bonus damage after enemies are hit by them. These are the core 5 that I need. I don't need more than this right now. Now, one of the key parts of my build that I'm missing is I do not have a Tempest Roar. This is a unique. If you're a relatively higher level player and you know, hey, I'm going to need this and that, don't go and start hunting those paragon glyphs right away. Don't do that. I'll explain why later. But I'm just warning you, when you're in the process, because I know I might need Fang and Claw, I'm almost certainly going to need Werewolf when I get that Tempest Roar. I don't have a Tempest Roar. There's no point in me building into it and saying, oh, well, let me just grab Werewolf now. I'll build into that when I get it. Now, the reason for that is because it can take a long time to get some uniques. And a lot of times, if a unique is a critical part of your build, for example, my character right here is running almost exclusively Ancestrals. I have Ancestral Glove, I have Sacred Boots, Sacred Gloves, and a Sacred Amulet. The main reason on this is just I haven't found a better upgrade target for me personally. Like on my gloves, I want to keep the ranks of Lightning Storm and the Willpower. Those are the 2 big things I want. On the boots, I want to keep the movement speed, and those resistances are very helpful. On the amulet, I have +3 ranks to a passive that I'm using, so I want to find another amulet that has another key passive there, and then also it has the +2 ranks of all defensive skills, which I use 2 of those. So as an example, I'll upgrade off of these. However, Adria's Exorbitant Will is a unique. Because of this, and because I need its unique power, I can't switch off of this individual ring until I get an ancestral version of it. This is one of the reasons why I say don't worry about upgrading. I'm going to be stuck with this ring in whatever capacity that I have this ring for until I am able to actually get an upgrade for it, an ancestral upgrade. So that's part of the reason why I say, you know, if you know you're going to need a unique that changes how your build works, don't worry about it just yet. So now we know we need to plot out what glyphs we need. This is important for later. If you look at the glyphs that are featured right here, you will notice on the bottom how they have requirements. How do requirements work? I'm going to explain that as we now show you how to start leveling. So your starting dexterity board is going to have very minor differences for each character. There's going to be no legendary node in here. There's going to be one paragon socket in here. And the majority of the things in the diamond shape around it are going to be dexterity based. This is on average. Most of my classes that I play, I don't play rogue, so I can't answer that. Dexterity is the #1 thing. Now, I'm going to explain main stat in a minute, but what's important to note is you don't want to put your best one here. Excuse me. Unless you're at the start of the game and you know you really need that socket and you don't have your second paragon board unlocked just yet. So, the only yellow nodes that you're going to have to choose from, you'll have these two, which I'll explain in a minute, which are usually class specific. You're almost always going to have some choice of an offensive versus defensive split on your build, and it really comes down to personal preference what you want to run. For example, this right here is maximum life and armor, and if you have a certain amount of willpower, you get a bonus to the life. This one right here is bonus damage and bonus maximum life. Now, the reason why I went for this one is because it gives me some maximum life at a decent chunk of damage, whereas this one is giving me just a small amount of armor plus a little bit more life. I would rather have the bonus damage with about half the life than a little more life and that teeny tiny bit of armor. This is honestly going to come down to personal choice as to which one of these you would want to run. But this is how most characters' boards work. So what you do is you're going to snake your way up until you reach the glyph socket right here. Now, the reason why I told you to write down what you want is very simple. It's kind of hard to read it on my little piece of paper. I'll try and do it. Okay? But there's little I's and W's and D's and S's next to these. That is indicating the requirement to meet the board. Now, what does that mean when I say requirement to beat the board? So this starting board right here, the most common thing that's going to be around it is dexterity in order to meet that requirement. So I want to run a glyph socket that requires dexterity. Now, dexterity is not my class's main stat. If you want to know how to find your main stat, go into your profile. You see your core stats that are right here. Level, strength. Each one of these stats right here is going to have a bonus regardless of what class you are. So, all classes except Barbarian just get an armor increase from strength. All classes except a Sorceress are going to get resistance to all elements. Now, as a Druid, I get increased resource generation because I use intelligence more as a Druid than other classes like Barbarian and Rogue do. Dexterity, I get dodge and critical strike chance. Willpower, though, is my main stat. This is important. You see how it says increases skill damage by 55.4%. Essentially, the more you level willpower, the stronger you do damage-wise because that is your main stat. Now, necromancers and sorceresses use intelligence as their main stat, barbarians use strength as their main stat, and rogues use dexterity as their main stat. Why is this important? The board choices that you have available to you are always going to come in different flavors. So, for example, if a build requires 25 intelligence to meet the requirement. That is because it is not your main stat. It's going to be harder to find a paragon board that rewards you with the necessary amount of stat needed. Now, if you were to compare this to your main stat, such as willpower, all of your paragon boards are going to have a large amount of willpower in them. The majority of the paragon boards, in fact, actually have enough willpower in them to meet that 40 requirement. So, what does that mean? In your starting board right here, because it's primarily dexterity based, don't put a willpower socket in here. You can easily meet that willpower requirement because looking at this starting board, for example. All right, so you have, by the way, this little diamond shape here is the nodes that actually count. I can get 10 willpower here. I can get 10 willpower here. That's 20. That's 25. That's 30. 35. 40. 45. 50. I could have a lot of willpower on this board. However, the majority of the other boards, as we will see, also have a lot of willpower in them. This is another board, by the way, that I have dexterity in, just as an example. 10 willpower, 20 willpower, 25 willpower, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So, just as an example, most boards have enough willpower. Willpower is nice to have on me, because after all, I am a druid, and willpower is my main stat. However, I do not need to focus willpower, because of the sockets that I need, look at what I have. Willpower, dexterity, 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 willpower. Now, why am I explaining this? What you want to focus on is grabbing any nodes that are not main stat. So if you look, this is dexterity, this is dexterity, this one right here is willpower, but that's simply because of the bonus that it has on it, where it gives bonuses to all magic nodes that are in range. That's the blue ones. I needed the buff more at the time, which is why I chose this. Then you see this one is dexterity. The last one that I'm going to do is going to be willpower. Why am I saving my willpower ones towards the end? Remember, any board can give you that willpower bonus. Not every board can give you the other ones. And that'll vary from class to class. So, what you want to do is you want to play Connect 4, basically. You're trying to get to a paragon socket in the least amount of picks. So if you notice, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, once you have that socket unlocked, then you want to grab as many nodes that meet that minimum requirement without overspending. I'll come back to that. So if you see here, these three all give me dexterity, which is what I need for this. This is the last one that I need for dexterity that's in range. So what I do is I grab the willpower node right here. I could obviously go, say, strength and intelligence, but I don't need that intelligence. Why would I purchase that? I can grab an extra willpower node instead, which is main stat. It's more helpful to the bracket. And then I'll start snaking my way up to the next board. Now, what happens when you get to the next board, I'll just use this as an example, you have to preview the board selection first. It'll give you a small explanation. And you think, well, I'll just pick whatever my build wants me to do, right? So, you know, I've already used my lightning ones. Let's say I want to run this one because I spend a lot of spirit. You can't just press X and do it. You have to preview the board. Now, when you preview a board, what you want to do is look at the paragon glyph, and you want to count out from a general radius about 3 out in either direction. Okay, what the main stat is. So for example, on this board, I know there's going to be a lot of willpower, so that's not what I'm looking for. Let's say I need intelligence, so what do I count out? This will be in range, that's 5. This will be in range, that's 12. This will be in range, that's 17. This will be in range, that's 22. This might be in range, it's a little harder to tell, that should be in range, so that'll be 27. So you know if you have an intelligence board, for example, you're going to want to run Ancestral Guidance because it gives you that intelligence. Now you see how I've positioned as close as possible. So I can quickly snake in, do the socket, then I can snake up to my next board, rinse and repeat. And you'll see that a little bit in how my board is set up. Now, let's talk about legendary nodes. Each of your other Paragon boards will have a legendary node. Think of this as like a legendary power that's in Paragon. These are usually spread out, so you have to go a little bit out of your way in order to get it. This one's a little bit closer, but some of the other ones are pretty spread out. For example, if you see this one, the other one is way far away. If you see this one right here, the other node is way far away. So, one could look at this and say, you have to choose. And while that is accurate, some builds do require these nodes. For example, this one right here, lucky hit chance, nature magic skills have 15% chance to entangle enemies, immobilizing and poisoning them. The poison isn't why I run this. The reason why you run this is the immobilize, which is a form of crowd control. I do a lot of damage to crowd controlled enemies. So, this is something that I need. If I didn't need this, or I didn't want to prioritize this, I could take this out entirely. This would free up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more Paragon points that I could put somewhere else. Now, another example. If you notice how I snake this tree, the more optimal route would be to go here, 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 and continue like this. Why have I gone out of my way, and I'm losing more Paragon points? This node right here is very powerful. It's not going to cost me more than 1 or 2. And remember, if I'm desperate for Paragon points later on, I can just re-snake this over this way. So for 3 more Paragon points, I can now cut out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I get 4 Paragon nodes back. However, this is very beneficial to me, and because I'm not desperate for Paragon points just yet, this is helpful. When you're trying to min-max and optimize your build to the absolute maximum possible, this can sometimes be a good option. Now, this right here is very helpful, this resistance to all elements. Why didn't I also then snake my way over here to do it? It's not on the way to something that I need. This is something I need. This Paragon glyph I don't necessarily need yet. Now obviously I could do something like this. Alright? I pull those points, I come back and say, okay. See? You can do something like this to make the process of getting to the next board easier. Just as an example of how you can flip around points. Downside to me is that run is going to be a little bit longer than, say, coming over here. I can reach my next Paragon board in 2 points. Whereas if I was back over here, I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more Paragon points. That's a pretty big difference. Now if I decide I need that resist all element more than I need that Paragon, this obviously becomes the way to go. So you can see how little detailed nuances there become important, because it enables you to get certain things faster. Now, why did I say you need to get only 6 Paragon boards? Now, the reason for this is quite simple. As you run your nightmare dungeons, you see how they have different tiers to them. Higher tiers reward higher glyph experience, and the amount of glyph experience that you need goes up every time you level your Paragon glyph. So see, this is level 8. Now, you notice that says radius size of 3. Basically, that's the direction, how far up the diamond goes. 1, 2, 3. If I get this Paragon glyph, which is currently, I believe, level 8, if I get this Paragon glyph up to level 15, I get an extra radius. So it comes up to here. It'd be 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, 4 here. What this means is I can now buy more of the stat that's tied to it for a larger bonus. So you see right now, this gives me 23% additive bonus lightning damage. If I buy more dexterity in the radius, I can get more of a bonus. So I can get another 7 right here, another 5 right here. This will now count, so that's another 5 right there. That means I basically can get 17 more dexterity towards that bonus. Now, once you have a glyph at level 15, and once you have the majority of the glyphs you're going to use at level 15, and if you have all of your paragon, or at least the majority of your paragon points unlocked, you can then come back, redo the entire board, and say, okay, so now instead of running, say, fulminate here, because I don't get as many points of dexterity, I can only add, you know, a few more nodes. Look, I can add 1, I can add 2, I can add, what else can I add? I can add 3, I can add 4, maybe I can add 5. If I find another board where I can add more dexterity, like this already has a lot in it. Okay, let's see what's in radius. I can add 1, I can add 2, I can add 3, I can maybe add 4, I can add 5, I can add 6. I could then maybe switch over that socket to here if I want more. You see how that works? But you need your specific paragon glyphs at that level. I need these at 15 in order to get that radius. This is why, like, 6 paragon is the most you can do, because you still then need to have those points to be able to scatter it over here. Because look at this. This is a willpower board, right? I'm going to want to buy as many willpower nodes as I can. However, these 2 willpower points right here are going to cost me an extra point. I'm not going to get any more value right now without having the larger radius. There's no point right now in grabbing those. I'll come back and grab them later, especially because, remember, I only have 1 more paragon board I need. So I can go get that paragon board right now, level that, and then come back with the remaining points that I will have. Because, you know, I'll probably have that paragon board by level 80. I've got 20 levels now worth of paragon points to use to fill in these areas. You can min-max like that later on in the game, but this is a very good early game setup of how to prioritize very specific pieces that you need for your build. Anyways, I hope this has been informative.